IBF and WBA light welterweight world champion Josh Taylor makes it abundantly clear if, or in his perspective, when he becomes undisputed at light welterweight after his unification fight against Jose Ramirez, he is more than willing to move up to welterweight to challenge former undisputed light welterweight world champion Terrence "Bud" Crawford. We're going to talk about that on this video. Welcome back to the channel, people. I hope you're well. Of course, it's your boy Budge here, and you are tuned into Talk to Budge. Now, you're more than welcome to come along to the channel, but as courtesy, you've got to wipe your feet before you come in, man. Hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, sign up for all notifications, so whenever I drop a new video, you're always first to find out about it. You're always first to see it and hear it, and so on and so forth. Of course, I am building this platform from scratch, from the very, very ground up. And so I need your help in order for me to be able to do so. I need you not only to like and subscribe, but I need you to share it with your friends, with your boxing friends, with your WhatsApp group chats, with your work colleagues and all the rest of it. Spread the word. Help me to build this platform, man. Also, it's called Talk to Budge for a reason. Even though I'm sharing my views and my takes on all of the topics in the videos that I share, ultimately, I want to hear from you, and you can share your thoughts in the comment section below, man. Whether you agree or disagree, I don't mind. I want to hear from you. I want to know your perspective. If you've got a different take on it, then let me know, man. Ultimately, this is a conversation. This is a dialogue. This is a discussion, and it's just not one-way traffic. So let me hear from you, man. But anyway, the topic of this video, as I mentioned in the intro, is about Josh Taylor, who, of course, is currently the IBF and WBA unified world champion at light welterweight, 140 pounds. Now, he is, in his next fight, going to fight for the undisputed title, right? He's fighting against Jose Ramirez, who is the WBC and WBO light welterweight 140 pound champion. And the two of them are going to lock horns on May the 22nd, in Las Vegas. The venue is still yet to be decided for an undisputed clash. It's a huge fight. Ramirez, in his most recent fight, fought against Victor Postal, who is a common opponent that both Ramirez and Taylor share. Taylor had beat Victor Postal earlier on in his career. And prior to that fight, he fought against Maurice Hooker, which was the fight in which he won the WBO title from Maurice Hooker. He stopped him. He was the first person to beat Maurice Hooker and won that belt in incredible fashion. The most recent fight of Josh Taylor was when we saw him mix it up in the ring with Regis Prograis, which was another brilliant fight and a contender for Fight of the Year. I remember in that year, the only other fight that I felt was potentially on the same level was the fight between Errol Spence and Sean Porter. Those two were absolutely brilliant fights that I felt, could arguably have gone down for fights of the year that year, man. But, Josh Taylor, a brilliant performance against Regis Prograis. It was a very close fight. It was, back and forth, and ultimately he got the nod in the end, but it was a really good fight. And I would urge you, even if you've watched it already, go back and watch that fight, because that fight was absolutely brilliant. And in terms of his resume and in terms of his record, Josh Taylor is certainly a guy that hasn't shied away from any opponents. He's not ducked anybody. He's been willing to mix it up and get stuck in at the deep end very early in his career. So he actually turned pro in 2015, and already by 2016 he was already fighting for titles. After only turning pro, after only a year turning pro, he was already fighting. I think it was in his sixth fight against Dave Martin. He fought for the Commonwealth title. And then in his 10th fight, which is the fight really that I started to stand up and pay attention to Josh Taylor, was when he fought against Ohara Davis. Remember the build up to that fight and the fact that, of course, Ohara Davis being a very vocal opponent and one that always knows how to get under the skin of his opponents. That was a very, very big fight. At that point in time, Ohara Davis hadn't been beaten, and so Josh Taylor was the first person to beat him, and that's when I really sort of started to stand up and pay attention to him. And since then, he's continued to fight tough opposition. I mean, he's got only 17 fights on his resume, and imagine in his 18th fight, he's going to be potentially undisputed. He's going to be unifying the division. It's incredible. And he even mentioned the fact that he's so surprised that it happened so soon. But of course, he's been in the ring and mixed it up with other top opposition. I've already mentioned Regis Prograis. He's been in there, like I said already, with Victor Postal, Miguel Vasquez, who's a former champion, and beaten loads of undefeated contenders like Ryan Martin and Ivan Baranchyk when he was fighting in the Super Series and stuff like that. So he's got a solid resume early on in his career, which is great. And he's going to be fighting against Jose Ramirez, of course, as I already mentioned. His last fight was against Victor Postal, and prior to that was against Maurice Hooker. So it is a formidable opponent. This is 1A and 1B of the division, ultimately. Of course, Josh Taylor will feel like he is the best in the division, and so too will Jose Ramirez. We're going to be able to see it live and direct when they lock horns on May the 22nd. I absolutely can't wait. It's going to be a brilliant, brilliant, brilliant fight. Particularly because of both of the styles of the fighters and how it's going to mesh. And speaking to Metro in an interview recently, Josh Taylor said just that. He said, and I quote, all I can say is, tactically, the fight against Prograis was a difficult fight and a more complex fight. He's speaking ahead of his fight against Jose Ramirez, of course. He says, I think this one is a bit more of a straightforward fight tactically in the way that it's going to go in terms of my style. The way I fight and the way that he fights. We both come to fight. We're going to leave it all in the ring. So it's got the makings to be a fire fight. It's got the makings to be very exciting whilst it lasts. So that suggests to me that he doesn't think it's going to go the distance. Whilst it lasts, I reckon he probably feels that the fight is going to end by stoppage. Both fighters are fighters that, you don't have to go looking for in the ring. They're going to take center ring and they're going to fight up close, short range, and in that mid distance as well. I think ultimately neither fighters, whilst they both can box, I don't think it's going to be a fight that's going to be boxed on the outside. I think it is really going to be a lot of inside fighting, and I think both of them have got great power. Both of them can fight on the inside, so it is going to be great to see when they do lock horns, when their styles do mesh. It's going to be fireworks ultimately, and with all four belts on the line, it is, of course, for all the marbles. I think it's going to be great ultimately, and we're going to get a great fight. I think it is going to absolutely deliver. Now, obviously, we're also aware that Jack Catterall, who is the only other fighter who holds a win over Ohara Davis as well, is the mandatory for the WBO. Now, he was willing to step aside in order to allow for this undisputed fight to take place. Of course, we know that unifications trump mandatories, so long as there can be a deal agreed in terms of step aside money and so on and so forth for the mandatory challenger. So Jack Catterall, is another UK-based fighter who is the mandatory for the WBO. So whoever wins this fight has to fight Jack Catterall. But in that interview that Josh Taylor did recently with Metro, he mentioned that he feels already like he is the best in the division and he's got nothing else to prove. But that would absolutely be cemented if he gets a win over Jose Ramirez. And he says at that point in time, he's going to weigh up his options. Does he fight the mandatory fight against Jack Catterall? Obviously with Catterall being the WBO mandatory, or does he move up and fight Terrence Crawford? Now, it's of course been long stated that Terrence Crawford has struggled to find an opponent at welterweight. And that is still the cloud that hangs over his head in all of the discussions about pound for pound rankings and how great Terrence Crawford truly is. We've seen him win titles at 135 at lightweight, at 140, of course, being undisputed, and now at 147, being the WBO welterweight world champion. But the cloud that still looms over his head is the fact that he hasn't fought against someone who people would consider top tier opposition at welterweight. And, you know, there's always been these conversations about him being on the wrong side of the street, the fact that he's signed with Top Rank and that all of the other top welterweight contenders are over with the PBC, so they're on the other side of the street and so on and so forth. The fact that Top Rank aren't willing to lose money to pay PBC fighters to come over and pay them what they've been earning over at PBC and all of this kind of stuff. And Bob Arum, who is obviously Terrence Crawford's promoter over at Top Rank, saying that he's lost out on so much money trying to promote Terrence Crawford because, you know, that his pay-per-views have been lackluster and opponents that he's fought against haven't generated the buzz that they need to generate, and the fact that Terrence Crawford himself isn't necessarily a big draw in terms of bringing in casual fans and whatnot, despite the fact that he's a brilliant fighter. So what Josh Taylor was saying is, look, if he still needs a dance partner after I have fought and won the undisputed world title at 140, I'm happy to come up, move up in weight and take him on. And that is a fight that I can absolutely see happening purely because of the fact that both of those fighters are represented and promoted by Top Rank. They're both on the same side of the street. And there is a built-in storyline there. Terrence Crawford was the last undisputed world champion at 140 pounds. The winner of Josh Taylor and Jose Ramirez will be the next one. And if they're moving up to 147, then it makes perfect sense for both for those paths to collide, right? The winner of that fight versus Terrence Crawford is a built-in storyline. It's two fighters, well, I mean, all three fighters are on the same side of the street because Jose Ramirez is also promoted by Top Rank. So it's a win-win for Bob Arum and Top Rank, and absolutely a fight that can happen. And to be honest, I've got more confidence in that fight happening than Terrence Crawford versus Errol Spence, because of course there are a lot of issues currently between the negotiations, and they're at loggerheads in terms of who deserves what split and all that kind of stuff. But I see that potential route is one that Terrence Crawford could go down, and I think it makes sense to do it. And also because of the fact that we heard Bob Arum come out and say that you know, it's a fight that he wants to make happen. There was rumors that Teofimo Lopez wanted to move up. Of course, he is a unified champion at 135 pounds with 3 out of the 4 belts in the WBA, IBF and WBO. And he was talking about potentially moving up to fight against the winner of Josh Taylor versus Jose Ramirez. And after the stunt that he pulled with you know, getting the George Kambosos fight, and the fact that fight's going to be on Triller, and all of the communication breakdown between him and Bob Arum and Top Rank and all that kind of stuff, and the very public dispute that they're having at the moment, Bob Arum's come out and said, look, you know, that there's no way that's going to happen. Like, Teofimo isn't going to be considered for that fight because of how he's gone about negotiating his next fight against George Kambosos. So we already know that Bob Arum has this plan. So it's absolutely something that we can see happen. And it is a great fight. Ultimately, the former and the current undisputed world title champions at 140 pounds, locking horns, clashing heads. I think it's going to make for an absolutely brilliant fight. And I like to see this. I know that Josh Taylor isn't looking past Jose Ramirez because he accepts that it is going to be a difficult and tough fight. But I like to see him putting it out there and putting it out in the open for everyone to know that he is more than willing to see it happen. He is more than willing to lock horns and get in a ring with Terrence Crawford. So if in future negotiations start and there is any talk about him potentially ducking or not really wanting that fight, he's setting the tone and the standard nice and clear, nice and early. And I like to see this. I like the temperament of Josh Taylor. He's been willing to fight in world title fights from his 6th fight. Or for title fights in his 6th fight. He's willing to get in there. He's willing to mix it up with the best. And this is what we need to be seeing in boxing, in every single weight division. The best need to fight the best. That is what we're paying top dollar for when we're paying our hard-earned cash as fans for pay-per-view fights. We want to be seeing the best fight the best, and that absolutely should happen. But anyway, that's my take on the matter. Josh Taylor versus Terrence Crawford is absolutely a fight that I'd like to see in the future. Is that something that you would like to see? Let me know in the comments. Make sure you like this video. Make sure you don't forget to subscribe. Share it amongst your friends. Spread the word of Talk to Budge. Make sure we're growing the channel and the platform together. I need your help in being able to do so. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. That's my take on the matter. And I'm going to catch you on the next video. Budge over and out.